this Sunday night, none other than Bronwyn Bishop, the former Speaker of the House, Linda Scott, Labor Councillor on the City of Sydney, and of course boss of the Local Government Association nationally, and Fiona Scott, the former Liberal MP and part of Premier State as well. All right, ladies, I've had my bit about why I think the Dominic Perrottet thing was weird. I know you're not going to vote for Dominic Perrottet. Did you think it was a masterstroke, game changer, or weird, the announcement today, Linda?
Look, I think you're dead right on a couple of accounts. I think the policy is wrong because it won't benefit a single person for 8 years, and actually people need help with their cost of living right now. Mm-hmm. The second reason it's a bad policy is because the increases that they spoke about, where your child might be able to get up to $28,000, that was the minimum amount they spoke on, that's modelled on a 7% annual interest rate, something the government themselves had not been able to achieve for at least the last 2 years with their own investments. And when you take the money out, there's likely to be a chunk of tax you'd have to pay on it, which will wipe out all the benefits. So if you actually look at the economics of this, it's unlikely to actually leave families with very much benefit at all. And the third issue is it just looks like an act of desperation from a desperate dying government. We've had trains cancelled in Sydney this week in multiple different areas, unpredictably. It's just a desperate last grab.
Okay, but Bronwyn, we keep hearing that the Liberal Party needs to present itself in a more family-friendly, more female-friendly manner, that this is essentially, you know, the cuddly wing of the party trying to find a way to be cuddly. Is it strategy or bribe? Does anyone, if they're half paying attention, hear $28,000? Because the number seems either too big to seem responsible, or once you start to shake the detail, who cares? 8 years' time.
Well, there was a sort of precedent, if you like, and that's when there used to be a payment made to mothers, irrespective of who they were.
Baby bonus.
The baby. No, predating that. It was only paid in respect of the second child.
Right.
It was paid. And many parents used to take that money and bank it for their kids. They put the first dollar in when they're born. 21 years later, they'd get it. Mm. So I don't see that the problem of 8 years is a problem. I don't see that as relevant to the policy. But what I do see is that in listening to the whole of the campaigns, I have heard nothing but money being thrown around by both sides.
Yeah.
And I'm over it. I honestly want to see something that says that we're going to keep the lights on, that we're going to have a sensible power policy, that we're not going to allow Liddell Power Station to be blown up, that we're not going to... Someone should get an injunction to stop them doing it. Mm. I mean, there are so many things that should have been front and centre in this campaign, which says this is what we stand for.
Well, part of what is driving Mark Latham, and at this point, what seems to be polled success, we'll see whether it turns up in the election, Fiona, is schools, right? So if you care... everyone cares about their kids and grandkids or their nieces and nephews, right? If you want a result, then you want an education system that's better than the one that we've presided over for the past little while, right? And obviously the difficulty for this government is they've been there for 12 years, which means they've been there since a kid started in kindergarten on their first year and now is making their way towards university. But again, I don't dislike Dominic Perrottet. I'm very hard on him during this campaign and I think the government's done, right? But I don't see the genius in this move. Please turn me from Saul to Paul and let the scales fall off my eyes.
Yeah, look, Paul, I actually think it's a really good policy, and I do disagree with you also about the 8 years. It is about it's for parents to be able to engage with taking an ability of providing a future for their children. And it's not just, here you go, here's a big chunk of cash at the end. Here's some money to help you with your HECS fees, with your TAFE fees if you're getting a trade, or to help you get into that first house. And when you look at what the average price of a house is, and I'm not just talking in Sydney, I'm talking in our regional areas right across New South Wales. And look, that's reflected right across the country. It's not just a New South Wales issue. This also helps kids get that money together so they can get to that deposit, because it's really hard to save for a deposit whilst you're also renting a house, or you end up living with mum and dad until you're 55 and then you move out. So this is really, in some ways, a policy that's like a reverse superannuation, but it helps kids get onto their feet to start with, but also gives the ability for families to contribute as well. So not only is the government going to put money in there for the child, but it's going to also give the ability for children, for parents to take that involvement. And then the other piece that I think is interesting that's not necessarily been spoken about, but this is, my take on what could happen with this sort of cash. By the government holding this sort of money within New South Wales, it also gives them the ability of having, say, an offset account against New South Wales debt. So rather than New South Wales borrowing money from, China, we're actually being able to offset this type of cash to buy more infrastructure in New South Wales. So
that's fair. It becomes a bit future fundy. But I suppose my issue is, right, is if you had a few $100 million, right, let's imagine, and you want to and you want to win an election, okay? So you want it to be big and shiny and loud and to make a difference. I think that there's a million things you could do with that money, right? And as soon as you pick a winner, there's a whole bunch of losers. To me, why not turn around and say, you know what? We will end homelessness because we're going to build facilities that people go to. We will spend this money on women's shelter. Like if it's, I'm talking cynically, politically cynically, right? Because I don't know that anyone in suburbia watching the 6 p.m. news tonight went, what, 8 years, 28, what, they carry the one?
No, well,
I don't think they get it.
I'm not sure about that. Let me tell you, I think there was
Despite
something
Fiona's
like,
better explanation than the Premier.
We are always hearing government say we're going to build homes for homeless people. They never get built.
Sure.
The federal government can never build a house. It hasn't got the ability to build a house. In New South Wales, I think 14 houses got built costing $27 million. I mean, it's a nonsense sort of concept. I think
it connects better than this did.
I don't think so.
Hey, you're the one in the game. I'm the one sitting back watching.
And what I was talking to you about before was child endowment.
Yes.
And it was played because you were a mother.
Yes.
Okay? So it was the mother who was providing for the child. And it was a great incentive, and it was a big lump of money in those terms before it was phased out and we went to child support A and B and all the other sorts of things that took over from it. But the principle was it was invested, it was something that recognised a benefit for that child. Now, the mother could use it if they wished, but a lot of people kept it for the children. Now, I think that the idea that $28,000 is not a lot of money.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
It is a lot of money.
Of course it is, but it's still an 8-year wait, which means they're going to be re-elected twice.
At the end of the day...
And what? They'll be on their 7th term when it pays off.
Well, yeah,
that's hard to... I'm saying just raw politics,
and it's
right?
not means tested, right? So it's going to go to every family. It's going to go to every family in the state. It's not going to go to those who need it the most. It's going to benefit those who are
for heaven's sake, it's
richer,
a policy without envy in it.
Because
isn't it equity? We all end up in the same place.
No, we're not having.
Because what it's going to
I always learned with equity, you came with a shield and not a sword. That's the meaning.
Okay, give me the short version then, Fiona's response.
It's going to benefit parents who are well off because they're the ones most likely to be able to match it. That means for those parents at the lower end of the spectrum,
it is $7 a week.
They're most unlikely to get access to it. Bronwyn, I'm just articulating the idea that government should be there for people who need it the most, not for people right at the top of the spectrum.
No, governments are there to provide a good environment for all individuals to take
Fiona,
advantage
put a bow on
and
it.
be successful.
15 seconds. Go.
Look, I was going to make the point that Linda was making, that it's not just government dishing out the cash. There is a co-payment to this as well, and the government matching that money that parents put in there. I think there's also a benefit here, and this hasn't also been said in the policy, but something I saw today when I was looking at it and reflecting on it. The ability of people maybe going through divorce or what have you, and the ability of some of those sort of payments potentially going into something like this. The ability in a family violence circumstance where, money being quarantined in this sort of way for children or for children's future that can't be dipped into in our other environments. Now, none of what I just said there was in the actual policy, but I can see how this sort of policy could be actually put aside to protect children. Now, as I said, that's my take on something that's not in the actual policy. So I think there's a lot of pieces of this that could actually be really, really good.